The late afternoon sun of New York City bathed the fuselage of the colossal Boeing 777-300ER in gold, as Royal Atlantic Flight RA-505 prepared for its departure to London. Inside the business-class cabin, the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, the delicate clink of crystal champagne flutes, and the rustle of the Financial Times. This was the world of those who held the reins of the economy, where time was calculated in thousands of dollars per second, and silence was a luxury item to be cherished above all else. Victoria Thorne sat in seat 1A, the prime spot in the cabin. At 34, she was the embodiment of ruthless success. Her jet-black hair was cut in a sharp bob, framing a face that was beautiful but cold, as if sculpted from ice. She was the CEO of Thorne Dynamics, a multinational technology conglomerate specializing in security software for governments. For Victoria, life was a series of binary calculations: win or lose, profit or loss, predator or prey. There were no gray areas. Beside her, in seat 1B, sat Leo, her 6-year-old son. Dressed in a tiny bespoke suit, Leo looked more like a miniature businessman than a child. He sat in silence, his small fingers swiping across the latest model iPad. His large, round eyes occasionally stole glances at his mother, but he dared not speak. Victoria had forged her son in steel discipline from the moment he was born. No noise, no whining, and absolutely no disturbing mother while she was working. "Mommy," Leo whispered, pointing out the window, "the plane is so big." Victoria didn't lift her head from her laptop screen, her fingers typing furiously at an email terminating a senior executive. "Leo, I'm working. Don't make me repeat rule number 1 on the plane." The boy shrank back, a flicker of sadness in his eyes, and turned his face toward the window. Just then, the dignified silence of the business-class cabin was broken by a clattering sound and heavy footsteps. Victoria furrowed her brows, looking up with irritation. Walking into the narrow aisle was a massive man, built like a boulder but moving with a clumsy caution to avoid bumping into other passengers. This was Marcus Vance. He wore a leather jacket worn thin at the elbows, faded jeans, and old sneakers stained with grease spots that hadn't been fully scrubbed off. Slung over one shoulder was an old military canvas duffel bag, and with his other hand, he led a small girl. The girl was named Lily, 7 years old, with curly brown hair and eyes that shone as if they held the entire starry sky. Lily wore a bright pink backpack, featuring a unicorn sparkling with glitter, the only splash of vibrant, misplaced color amidst the luxurious gray, black, and beige tones of the business-class cabin. "Daddy, are our seats here?" Lily asked, her clear voice ringing out, shattering the somber atmosphere. She pointed to 2 empty seats in row 2, directly behind Victoria and Leo. Marcus smiled gently, the expression softening the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes and the faint scar running down his chin. "That's right, Princess. Seats 2A and 2B. Mind your feet." Marcus struggled to lift his battered carry-on bag into the overhead compartment. Due to his immense size and the narrow aisle, Lily's unicorn backpack accidentally brushed lightly against Victoria's armrest. Victoria pulled her arm back as if she had just touched something filthy. She took off her glasses, turned her body completely around, and swept her gaze from Marcus's head to his toes with undisguised contempt. "Sorry," Marcus said quickly, his voice deep and raspy. "She's a bit excited. It's her first time on a plane this big." Victoria did not respond to the apology. She smirked, turning to speak to a man in a suit sitting across the aisle, a banking partner she knew, but her volume was loud enough for Marcus to hear every word. "Do you see that, Charles? Business class has really gone downhill. The airline should review its ticket policies. Some people should know their place and not try to chase things beyond their class just because they scraped together a few cheap reward miles." The man named Charles chuckled, shaking his head in agreement. "Probably won the lottery or drained their life savings just for the experience.
Hopefully they know how to use a knife and fork. Marcus froze. The hand holding the bag aloft gripped the handle so tight his knuckles turned white. A wave of heat rushed up his spine. It wasn't shame, but the suppressed rage of a beast provoked. He could turn around and tell that arrogant woman exactly who he was. He could tell her that while the money in her account might be substantial, the number of times he had faced death to protect the sky so people like her could sleep soundly was far greater. But then, a small, warm hand grasped his pinky finger. Marcus looked down. Lily was looking at him, her large round eyes untainted by the malice surrounding them. "Daddy, what is she saying?" Lily whispered. Marcus took a deep breath, exhaling slowly, pushing the warrior of his past back into the shadows. He knelt on one knee, adjusting her daughter's collar, his voice gentle but firm. "She's saying that we are very lucky, Lily. And do you remember what Mommy Clara used to say? Eagles never waste time explaining to sparrows how high they fly. We are here because we deserve to be." He stood up, completely ignoring Victoria, and helped Lily fasten her seatbelt. Victoria felt as though she had been slapped in the face by his disregard. Marcus's dignified silence made her sarcasm feel ridiculous and bitter. She huffed coldly, turning back to her laptop, typing harder on the keyboard, as if to vent her anger. In the seat next to her, little Leo peeked back through the gap between the seats. He saw Lily pulling a sketchbook and a box of colored pencils from her unicorn backpack. Lily caught Leo's gaze. Instead of being shy, she flashed a radiant smile and held up a scribbled drawing of an airplane with rainbow wings. "Do you want to color?" Lily asked softly. Leo's eyes lit up, his small hand reaching out to take the blue pencil Lily was offering. But a manicured hand with bright red nails blocked him. "Leo," Victoria hissed softly, "what did I say about talking to strangers, especially those not from the same class?" Leo pulled his hand back, hanging his head low. Lily also withdrew her hand, her eyes flashing with sadness, but she said nothing, quietly returning to her page. Marcus watched the scene, his heart tightening. He saw the loneliness in the rich child's eyes and the invisible cruelty the mother was imposing on him. The flight took off. As the Boeing 777 reached a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, night began to fall. Outside the window, pitch-black clouds churned like giant monsters swallowing the moonlight. Elena, the chief flight attendant, a woman in her 40s with a professional smile but sharp eyes, began serving dinner. She sensed the tension in the front rows. Passing Marcus, she placed an orange juice with extra ice for Lily and a double whiskey for Marcus, even though he had only ordered water. "For you, sir," Elena whispered, winking. "Looks like you need this more than water after that welcome." Marcus smiled gratefully. "Thank you, but I don't drink when I fly. Old rule." "Old rule?" Elena raised her eyebrow curiously. But Marcus had already turned to point out the twinkling constellations outside the window to Lily. 2 hours passed peacefully. Victoria had finished her report and was sipping red wine, enjoying the feeling of victory after closing a contract via satellite email. Leo had fallen asleep, his head resting against the side of the seat. In the row behind, Marcus was telling Lily about aerodynamics, explaining why the wingtips curved upward, his voice deep and warm like a lullaby. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupted from the left wing, tearing through the silence. The giant aircraft shuddered violently, as if slapped by a colossal invisible hand. The wineglass in Victoria's hand flew, splashing red liquid all over her expensive cream silk dress. The lights in the cabin flickered out, then snapped back on in a terrifying flashing red.
What the hell was that? Charles, the man across the aisle, screamed, his face drained of blood. The plane banked sharply to one side, entering freefall for several seconds, causing everyone's stomachs to lurch into their throats. Screams echoed from the economy cabin behind. Oxygen masks dropped, dangling in front of the passengers. "Mommy!" Leo woke up, screaming in terror. Victoria, for the first time in her life, felt control slip from her grasp. She panicked, fumbling to find her son's hand, her face pale.
She looked out the window and realized with horror that the left engine was spewing ferocious orange flames, illuminating the swirling black clouds around them. In the cockpit, the situation was infinitely worse. Captain Anderson was wrestling with the control yoke, which vibrated as if it wanted to snap in two. "Mayday! Mayday! RA-505 has lost engine number 1. Hydraulic pressure dropping. We've been struck by lightning in the main electrical system." Beside him, co-pilot Julian lay slumped over the control panel, blood trickling from his temple. The initial violent jolt had thrown him head-first into the reinforced window frame, knocking him unconscious instantly. "Julian, wake up!" Anderson shouted, but there was no response. Alone, he could not keep the plane stable in the storm while handling the dozens of emergency procedures flashing red on the screens. The plane lurched again, this time the nose pitching down at a dangerous angle. The jarring warnings of pull up and stall blared through the cockpit. Back in business class, Marcus Vance had transformed. He was no longer the gentle, clumsy father. His eyes were sharp and cold, intensely focused. He quickly checked Lily's seatbelt, tightening it. "Lily, listen to Daddy." Marcus's voice rang out, strangely calm amidst the chaos. "We are playing the roller coaster game. Do you remember this game? I need you to sit still, hold tight to the seat, and count sheep for Daddy, okay?" "Yes, Daddy." Lily nodded, though her lips trembled. Her absolute trust in her father kept her from crying. Marcus unbuckled his own seatbelt. He stood up, lowering his center of gravity to maintain balance as the floor tilted wildly. "What are you doing? Sit down! Do you want to die?" Victoria screamed when she saw Marcus stand. She thought the country pumpkin was panicking and about to do something stupid.
Marcus didn't look at her. He walked straight toward the galley, where Elena was trying to call the cockpit on the interphone, but no one answered. "Miss Elena," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of a military command, "is something wrong with the co-pilot?" Elena looked up, her hand shaking as she held the receiver. I don't know. The captain isn't answering, but the plane is out of control. Please, sir, return to your seat." "Listen to me," Marcus interrupted, pulling a worn leather wallet from his inner pocket. He flipped it open, holding it up for Elena. Beneath the clear plastic was an old military ID, still legible, and more importantly, a special flight license bearing the seal of the Royal Air Force. Marcus Vance, rank Lieutenant Colonel, unit Ghost Squadron, specialty test pilot and combat flight instructor. Elena's eyes widened. She knew of the Ghost Squadron. They were legends, the ones who flew into the eye of the storm, called upon when no one else could complete the mission. "I have 5,000 flight hours on jets and 2,000 on heavy commercial aircraft. If the co-pilot is unconscious, Captain Anderson needs support right now. Open the cockpit door, immediately." The determination in Marcus's eyes was the only steady thing on the swaying aircraft. Elena hesitated no longer. She nodded, entering the emergency code into the cockpit door keypad. "Please," she said, "save us." The cockpit door burst open. Marcus squeezed inside. The scene before him was every pilot's nightmare. The control panel looked like a Christmas tree lit up with red error lights. The co-pilot was unconscious. Captain Anderson was straining, sweat soaking his shirt, his knuckles white as he gripped the yoke. "Who is that? Get out! I am declaring an emergency!" Anderson roared without turning his head. "Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Vance, ex-Air Force," Marcus shouted over the roaring wind. He quickly pulled co-pilot Julian out of the seat, laying him on the floor behind them as neatly as possible, then jumped into the co-pilot's seat. "I'm taking the right seat. Report status." Anderson froze for a tenth of a second, glancing at the stranger who had just sat down beside him. The way Marcus placed his hands on the controls, the way his eyes swept the pressure and fuel gauges, it was the reflex of a professional. Engine 1 on fire, fuel cut but flames persist. Engine 2 at 60% power but unstable. Lost hydraulic system B. Weather radar is dead, Marcus. We are flying blind in a storm.
"It's fine," Marcus replied, his hands moving deftly to flip auxiliary switches, restarting the electronic stability system. "I have eagle eyes. I will guide you. Maintain 25,000 feet. We'll find a way down."
The plane shuddered violently again as another bolt of lightning struck just ahead of the nose. Back in the passenger cabin, Victoria stared at the cockpit door that had just closed behind the failure of a man. She didn't understand what was happening. Why did the flight attendant let him in there? Why was he so calm? "Mommy, I'm scared," Leo sobbed, burying his head in Victoria's chest. Victoria hugged her son tight, but her eyes remained glued to the cockpit door. For the first time, she felt that her judgment might have been terribly, horribly wrong. But in that moment, the fear of imminent death overwhelmed everything. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, Victoria Thorne, the woman who never bowed her head, began to pray. In the cockpit, the real battle had just begun. "Nearest airport is Shannon, Ireland," Marcus said, looking at a paper map he had pulled out because the GPS was flickering. 80 miles northeast. But we have a strong tailwind, and with one engine, we'll approach very fast. The runway there is short, and it's raining hard. We have no air brakes. Hydraulics are gone. Anderson gritted his teeth. If we land, we'll be coming in like a bullet. "We will land," Marcus affirmed, his voice cold. "I will modulate the remaining engine thrust to help you steer. You focus on keeping the nose level. When we touch down, I'll activate the emergency manual braking system. We only have one shot, Captain." Outside the cockpit glass, rain pelted the windshield like bullets of water. The massive Boeing 777 now felt as fragile as a dry leaf in a hurricane. With every gust, the fuselage groaned and twisted.
"Altitude 5,000 feet, Anderson announced, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "Speed 180 knots. Too fast, Marcus. We are too fast." "Hold steady," Marcus shouted. His left hand gripped the throttle of the right engine, his right hand ready on the backup brake lever. "I'm dropping thrust to 40%. Prepare for gravity gear extension." Because the hydraulic system was damaged, they couldn't lower the landing gear normally. Marcus leaned forward, yanking the red emergency lever under the dashboard. A dry clunk thud echoed, followed by the roar of increased wind resistance as the heavy wheels free fell and locked into position. "3 greens, gear locked," Marcus reported. "We are on final approach. Do you see the runway lights?" "I can't see anything. The rain is too thick." Anderson squinted in desperation. "Trust me," Marcus said, his eyes glued to the altimeter and compass. "Heading 240. Hold it. 500 feet. 400 feet. Eyes forward, Captain." Suddenly, through the white sheet of rain, 2 rows of dim guidance lights appeared like ghostly strings of pearls. The soaked runway reflected the trembling headlights of the aircraft. "I see it!" Anderson shouted. "But we're drifting right!" Correcting, Marcus nudged the throttle. The giant plane wobbled, banking, trying to regain its center. In the passenger cabin, the tension was taut as a wire. The fastened seatbelt signs blazed. The flight attendants took their positions, shouting commands. "Heads down! Stay down! Brace! Brace!" Victoria Thorne pressed Leo's head into her lap, her other hand gripping the armrest so hard her nails shattered. She closed her eyes, the image of the man named Marcus appearing in her mind. Could a man she called a failure save her life? "Daddy," Lily whispered in the row behind, hugging the teddy bear in her unicorn backpack. Crash! The wheels hit the runway with a terrifying impact. The plane bounced into the air once before slamming down a second time. The screech of rubber burning against asphalt drowned out even the thunder. "Brakes! Full brakes!" Anderson screamed. Marcus and Anderson slammed on the pedals together, but on the slick runway and at such high speed, the plane skidded like an out-of-control monster.
"Right engine is overheating," Marcus warned, seeing the needle spike into the red zone. "It's about to blow." The Boeing careened past the 1,000-meter mark, then 2,000 meters. At the end of the runway lay a muddy field and a concrete barrier. "We won't stop in time," Anderson cried in despair. Marcus made a split-second decision. Cut the engine, turn hard left, into the grass. He yanked the yoke to the left. The plane swerved sideways, the right wing scraping the runway, sending up thousands of sparks like deadly fireworks. The entire mass of metal drifted sideways, shooting off the tarmac, tearing through the muddy grass. Screech! Boom! A final collision threw everything into chaos. The plane came to a halt, tilting sharply to one side. The right wing had snapped off. The right engine was blazing, flames licking along the fuselage. In the cockpit, the airbags didn't deploy because it was an older model, but the multi-point harnesses held Marcus and Anderson in place. Both panted heavily, dazed but alive. "Evacuate! Evacuate immediately!" Anderson shouted into the microphone, activating the alarm system. Marcus ripped off his seatbelt. "You take care of Julian. I'm going to the back." He kicked open the cockpit door, rushing into the galley. Black smoke had begun to seep from the vents, the acrid smell of burning plastic filling his nose. "Open the exits! Move!" Marcus shouted at Yelena, who was struggling with the heavy door. With his strength, he helped her push it open. The evacuation slide automatically inflated in the rain. "Lily! Where is Lily?" Marcus turned back to business class. The scene was chaotic. First class, once a symbol of luxury, was now a battlefield. Oxygen masks dangled, luggage was strewn everywhere. Due to the final impact when sliding off the runway, the ceiling above rows 1 and 2 had partially collapsed, bringing the overhead bins down with it. "Daddy!" Lily's voice came from under a seat. Being small, she had ducked onto the floor when the crash happened and miraculously avoided major injury. Marcus rushed over, pulling his daughter from beneath the seat. He hugged her tight, checking her quickly. "Are you okay? Does it hurt anywhere?" "I'm okay, but them," Lily pointed forward. Marcus followed her finger and his heart constricted.
Rows 1A and 1B, where Victoria and Leo sat, were crushed under a massive section of the ceiling and the metal frame of the overhead bins. The heavy metal frame blocked the exit, penning Victoria's legs down. Victoria was in a state of utter panic. She tried to push the metal off, but it was useless. Her right leg was pinned tight, the pain rendering her immobile. Leo was trapped in the inner seat, unharmed, but screaming in terror, clinging to his mother. The black smoke grew thicker. The fire from the right wing was spreading fast toward their window. The temperature in the cabin was rising rapidly. Other passengers from the rear were pushing and shoving to get to the back exits. No one noticed the mother and son trapped in the front row. Marcus turned to Alina at the exit door. "Take Lily down, now." "But what about you?" Alina screamed. "Go!" Marcus shoved Lily into Alina's arms. "Daddy will be right down, Lily. Go with her." Lily sobbed, but obediently let Alina carry her down the slide. Once his daughter was safe, Marcus turned back to face death. He lunged towards seat 1A. His eyes stung from the smoke. "Help me, please!" Victoria screamed when she saw the figure approaching. Her beautiful, haughty face was now smeared with soot and tears. When she realized it was Marcus, the man she had insulted, her eyes flashed with shock and fear. Would he leave her to die, to take his revenge? Marcus didn't say a word. He didn't look into her eyes for remorse or begging. He looked at the metal ceiling crushing her. "Cover your son's head," Marcus commanded, his voice roaring like thunder. Victoria hurriedly shielded Leo's head. Marcus slid both hands under the sharp metal frame. The jagged edges cut into his flesh, blood beginning to seep out and stain his shirt sleeves. He took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of strength in his rippling muscles into his shoulders and arms. "Ah!" Marcus roared, veins bulging on his neck. The metal frame, weighing hundreds of pounds, slowly lifted. The metal groaned and shrieked. "Get out! Pull your leg out! Hurry!" Marcus shouted, his face red with exertion. Victoria suppressed the agony, biting her lip until it bled, and managed to drag her right leg out of the death trap. Her expensive high heel was left behind, but she was free.
Marcus let go. Slam! The metal mass crashed back down, crushing the seat where Victoria had just been. He gasped for air, his chest heaving, but it wasn't over. The aisle was still blocked by debris. The fire outside had begun to melt the window glass. The glass started to crack. "Give me the boy." Marcus didn't wait for Victoria's reaction. He reached over, hoisting little Leo up with one arm, clamping the boy to his hip securely like a rugby ball. Leo clung to his neck in fear. With his other hand, Marcus grabbed Victoria's wrist, pulling her up. Her legs screamed in pain, and she stumbled, collapsing. I can't walk. My leg," Victoria sobbed. Marcus didn't hesitate. He swung around, letting Leo cling to his back. "Leo, hold tight to my neck. Don't let go." Then he bent down, swooped his arm around Victoria's waist, and hoisted her up. With a child on his back and an injured woman at his side, Marcus plowed forward like an unstoppable tank. He kicked away suitcases blocking the path, used his shoulder to smash aside dangling ceiling fragments. The smoke was so thick, visibility was less than a meter. Marcus coughed violently, his lungs feeling like they were on fire. But he kept moving, dragging the billionaire mother and son out of hell. Reaching the exit, cold wind and rain slapped their faces, bringing the taste of life. "Slide down, quickly." Marcus set Leo on the slide first, then helped Victoria sit on the edge. Before sliding, Victoria turned back to look at Marcus. His face was blackened, blood ran down his arms, his clothes were torn to shreds, but his eyes still burned bright, steadfast and full of compassion. There was not a shred of resentment, only salvation. "Why?" Victoria whispered, her voice choking. "Why did you save me?" Marcus didn't answer that question. He just gently pushed her back. "Go home." Victoria slid down into the rain. Marcus was the last one to leave the plane. Just as Marcus's feet hit the muddy ground, a massive explosion shook the earth. The remaining fuel tank of the Boeing detonated. The entire aircraft erupted like a giant torch in the rainy night. If they had been delayed by just 30 seconds, they would have been incinerated. On the waterlogged grass, under the sweeping headlights of dozens of fire trucks screaming towards them, Victoria sat in the mud, hugging Leo tight. She saw Marcus running towards an ambulance where Lily was waiting. The father and daughter embraced. Marcus knelt, kissing his daughter's hair, ignoring the rain and blood mixing on his body.
It was the most beautiful and heartbreaking image Victoria had ever seen. The wealth, the power, the billion-dollar contracts all suddenly became meaningless and trivial before that mud-stained embrace. She wanted to stand up, wanted to run to them, but paramedics surrounded her, lifting her onto a stretcher. "Are you all right, ma'am?" a nurse asked. Victoria didn't answer. She only watched Marcus's back disappearing into the curtain of rain, her tears mixing with the salty rainwater on her lips. She knew she owed that man a debt that could not be paid with money. The rain washes away, and a quiet disappearance. Shannon Airport was as chaotic as a broken anthill. Hundreds of reporters from international broadcasters, BBC, CNN, Sky News, crowded the security fences. News of the miracle on the Shannon, a Boeing 777 belly landing with all souls surviving, had spread across the globe at breakneck speed. In the field medical tent, Marcus sat on a cold metal folding chair. A nurse was bandaging his arm, which was covered in deep lacerations. The bleeding had stopped, but the ache was beginning to seep into every fiber of his being as the adrenaline faded. "You need to go to the hospital for x-rays and stitches," the nurse said, looking at him with admiration mixed with concern. "These cuts are deep." "No need," Marcus shook his head, his voice raspy from smoke. "Just wrap it tight. I need to take my daughter home." Beside him, Lily had fallen asleep from exhaustion, still clutching her mud-stained teddy bear. Marcus looked at her, his heart aching. He knew if he stayed here 1 minute longer, the media would find him. They would dig up the past of the ghost, about the covert missions, and the peaceful life of father and daughter would be shattered. Taking advantage of the moment the medics focused on moving a fracture victim to an ambulance, Marcus gently picked Lily up. He draped his tattered jacket over her to hide her face, then quietly slipped out the back of the tent, disappearing into the rainy night. He hailed a battered taxi parked at the edge of the airport. "Where to, mate?" the driver asked, eyeing the disheveled pair in the rearview mirror with suspicion. "Take me to the night ferry to England," Marcus said, pulling the last dry bills from his wallet. "And please don't turn on the radio."
The car rolled away, leaving behind the flashing lights of police cars and the powerful woman receiving special medical care, the woman whose life he had just saved, but to whom he had left no name. The Ice Queen's White Knight. Victoria Thorne lay in a VIP room at Dublin's finest hospital. Her right leg was in a cast, her scratches treated with the most expensive medicines. Beside the hospital bed, Leo was fast asleep, his small hand gripping his mother's tightly as if afraid she would vanish. The room was quiet, luxurious, filled with flowers and gifts from business partners. But Victoria felt cold, a bone-deep chill that no cashmere blanket could warm. She looked at her reflection in the dark TV screen. She saw a woman whose perfect exterior had collapsed. She recalled Marcus's eyes on the plane, not the eyes when he saved her, but the eyes when she insulted him. Some people should know their place. That sentence now echoed in her head like a curse. She had judged him a failure because of a frayed jacket. But that very failure, with grease-stained hands, had piloted a massive machine to save her life. That very failure had used his own body to hold up a ton of steel so she wouldn't be crippled. Victoria picked up the phone. "Hello, Mrs. Thorne?" Her personal assistant's voice rang out, full of worry. "Are you all right? We have prepared a private jet to bring you back to London first thing in the morning." "Cancel the schedule." Victoria cut in, her voice hard but trembling. "I want you to do one thing. Find that man for me." "Which man, ma'am?" "The man in seat 2A. His name is Marcus Vance. Find his address, at any cost. Mobilize the corporation's security and intelligence teams if necessary. I want to know who he is, where he lives, and what he needs." "Yes, ma'am. I will report back within an hour." Victoria lowered the phone, turning to hold Leo. For the first time in years, she cried. Hot tears rolled down, washing away the mask of arrogance, revealing a human being stripped bare and full of regret. Dawn and thunder from the sky. The next morning, Marcus's small house sat tucked away in a remote suburb of Kent, England. It was a modest cottage with a mossy, tiled roof and a yard overgrown with grass, because he didn't have the money to hire a gardener, and he was too busy with extra shifts to cut it himself. Marcus woke up early, as usual. His aching arm made him wince with every movement, but he moved softly so as not to wake Lily. He went to the kitchen, taking the last 2 eggs from the fridge to crack into the pan. The sizzling sound of grease was the familiar soundtrack of this poor but peaceful life. "Daddy, does your arm still hurt?" Lily rubbed her eyes as she walked out, still hugging the teddy bear from yesterday. "I'm fine, little warrior," Marcus smiled, using his good hand to pat her head. "Today, I'm making you a special sunny-side-up egg." Suddenly, a strange sound came from the distance. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The sound of rotor blades tearing the wind. At first, it was just the buzz of a bee, but it quickly grew into a roar that shook the ground. The glasses on the dining table began to vibrate. The window panes rattled as if they were about to shatter. Marcus turned off the stove,
rushing to hug Lily, shielding her by instinct. "Stay here." He opened the front door and stepped out into the yard. And the scene before him made even the seasoned veteran pilot freeze. Against the gray sky of the autumn morning, 3 glossy black Airbus H-160 helicopters were descending. These were among the most modern and expensive civilian helicopters in the world, usually reserved for heads of state or the ultra-wealthy. On the fuselage of each was the stylized, gold-plated eagle logo of the Thorn Corporation. The wind from the rotors whipped the grass in Marcus's yard flat, like rolling waves. Neighbors began pouring out into the street, pointing with utter astonishment. Never had this poor neighborhood witnessed such a display of power. The first helicopter landed right in the middle of the large grassy patch in front of Marcus's house. The other 2 hovered behind like escorts. The passenger door opened. A bodyguard stepped down first, opening an umbrella to shield against the wind and dust. And then Victoria Thorne stepped down. She was not in a wheelchair. She was on crutches, her right leg in a stark white cast. She was not wearing a power suit, but a simple, long wool dress, her face wearing only light makeup. With her was Leo. Victoria signaled the bodyguard to stay back, then hobbled alone toward Marcus, who stood frozen in his doorway.
When she reached him, stopping about 2 meters away, Victoria paused. She looked at the man in his disheveled home clothes, his arm wrapped in blood-stained gauze. Then, witnessed by the entire neighborhood and her entourage, the chairwoman of London's most powerful technology corporation let go of her crutches, struggled to stand straight on one leg, and bowed deeply at a 90-degree angle. "Mr. Marcus," Victoria's voice rang out, not through a megaphone, but clear and full of inner strength. "I have come to pay a debt, not a debt of money, but a debt of an apology and a life." Marcus furrowed his brow, moving to help her, but Victoria raised a hand to stop him. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but resolute. "Yesterday, on the plane, I spoke foolish words. I mocked you because you were poor. I taught my son to look down on those not of our class. But when death came, my money became scrap paper. My reputation became meaningless. Only your calloused hands were the only things that saved us." She turned to Leo. The boy ran past her to where Lily was peeking out from behind the door. "Hi," Leo said, holding out the finest box of colored pencils he owned. "I'm sorry I didn't take your pencil yesterday. Do you still want to color with me?" Lily looked at her dad, then at Leo. She beamed, a smile that melted all distance. "Sure, I have a drawing of my daddy as Superman." Victoria smiled through her tears, then turned back to Marcus, pointing toward the 3 helicopters. "Marcus, I know you are a man who seeks no fame or profit. You walked away without needing a word of thanks. But I cannot live the rest of my life with this debt of gratitude. These 3 helicopters are not for showing off. They carry 3 things." I pointed to the first helicopter she had just exited. "The first carries Professor Williams, Europe's leading trauma orthopedic specialist. He and his medical team will examine and treat your arm immediately. I will not let the man who saved my life suffer pain from scars." She pointed to the second helicopter hovering above. "The second carries an appointment contract. Thorn Corporation owns a private fleet of 20 jets. I respectfully invite you to be the Director of Aviation Safety for the group. You won't have to fly if you don't want to. I need your knowledge, your experience, and especially your character, to ensure no one ever has to experience the terror of yesterday again. You fill in the salary,
plus 5% equity in the transport subsidiary. And she pointed to the last helicopter.
The third is for Lily. It is a lifetime education trust. She will attend any school she desires from now until she gets her doctorate, anywhere in the world. And more importantly, Victoria paused, her voice trembling. That helicopter will always be ready whenever Lily and you want to visit us. Because Leo, he really needs a true friend, and I really need a friend to teach me how to be human. Silence fell over the yard. Only the faint whistle of the wind remained. The neighbors held their breath, waiting. Marcus looked at the powerful woman standing humbly before him. He saw the sincerity in her eyes. He saw Leo and Lily sitting on the doorstep coloring together, their giggles ringing out like bells. He stepped forward, gently placing a hand on Victoria's shoulder. "Mrs. Thorne." "Please call me Victoria." "Victoria." Marcus smiled, the same gentle smile he had worn when reassuring her in the sea of fire. "I don't need equity. I also don't need the best doctors. My hands are mechanics' hands, used to scars. But," he looked towards Lily, "I accept the job offer because I need money so Lily doesn't have to wear old clothes anymore. And I accept the offer of friendship because my daughter also needs a friend to color with." Victoria broke down. She couldn't hold it back anymore and embraced the large man who smelled of engine oil and fried eggs. "Thank you. Thank you," she sobbed. That morning, the people of the poor neighborhood witnessed a strange sight. A billionaire on crutches eating burnt sunny-side-up eggs at an old wooden table with a mechanic, while $3 million helicopters sat silently in the yard like obedient beasts guarding a budding friendship. Marcus Vance had proven to the world that the value of a man lies not in the wallet he holds, but in the hand he extends when others fall. And sometimes, a stormy sky is the only place where humans can clearly see each other's hearts.